I was working for a company called Club Mahindra, and we were trying to figure out how do you get people across companies to understand something abstract. Yeah, in my case, the abstraction was values. All your companies have values? Yeah, usually a poster somewhere in the conference room. My question was, how do you make sure everyone in the organization understands that word in the same manner? Because why do you have values? Because values are supposed to be guidelines for behavior which will cause culture. But the chances are, and I'm willing to take a bet, that every organization sitting here, if you ask the top 10 people in your company to describe any one of those values, you'll get 10 answers. Yeah? And so that's what I was struggling with. And one of the values, so our mission or vision was to make every moment magical. We are in the hospitality business, and one of the values that I wanted everyone to understand was no room for ordinary. The question is, how do you get people to understand no room for ordinary? I didn't have an answer. And I did things what every other company does, which is ran workshops and printed posters and t-shirts and coffee mugs, and nothing worked. And that's when I got introduced to something called business storytelling. And the person who introduced me is a partner of mine now in Australia. And he said that when you're trying to explain something abstract, this was abstract, then tell stories about it. And so I said, where do I find these stories? He said, from your organization, go and ask people to tell you stories of what they think is a great display of no room for ordinary. And many of them will give you answers that are incorrect because they don't understand. But there will be a few that will give you answers that are absolutely correct. And take those absolutely correct answers and get your leaders to share those stories in order for people to understand. So with that, I went, and as I went through the company, I got those stories that I was told where people don't understand. So for example, there was this housekeeping boy in Rajasthan, and I asked him, have you ever got a situation of where you displayed no room for ordinary? He said, of course I have. I said, tell me about it. He said, sir, one day one extra large family came to the resort. So I said, what is an extra large family? He said, 4 children and mother, father. I said, then? He says the 2 parents wanted 2 extra towels. And as I was going to get 2 extra towels, the children also wanted 2 extra towels each. I didn't complain. I provided 18 towels in one room. No room for ordinary, he thought. But is that a magical moment, getting 18 towels? Clearly not, right? But in all this, I got stories like the one that I've written, which starts off the book. And it's a story told to me by a receptionist at perhaps one of Mahindra's best resorts, which is in Coorg. And he says one day his colleague gets a call from a member. He takes the call. And when he's relaying the message to the dining hall, this guy overhears. And this guy is telling the dining hall, the member is coming with 2 children and his wife. They are stuck in traffic. They can't make it for the lunch service. So can we pack some lunch boxes and keep? So this guy says, hey, did you ask the member which route he's coming from? He says, yeah, that route. Hey, call the lunchroom again. I said, why? Call them and tell them to pack some tea and cakes as well. I said, but why? He says, don't you know, there is a flower show that will be inaugurated by the local politician. The police have blocked that road. There is no way these members are coming before tea. So, oh my God, there are children in the car. Half an hour later, the shift gets over. This guy, without taking any permission, without telling anybody, goes to the lunchroom, picks up those lunch boxes, packs it up on his bike, travels through some interior roads for some 7-8 kilometers, keeps calling the member's mobile, locates the car and says, your children must be hungry. And that is living the value, no room for ordinary. And suddenly, people get it. Like I can see a lot of heads, I get it. I can't get it when you tell me that abstraction, but I get it when I tell you the story. And so after I saw that magic happen, I decided this is what I could do for a living, right? Help organizations using stories. And so that's what I do. Now, stories are not something that are new. Anyone recognize what is this an example of? cave painting, right? It's one of the most well-preserved cave paintings in the world in southwest of France. Why were people painting in caves? To record their stories. You and I want to record our stories. I don't know about you. I don't paint my living room wall. So why were they painting their living room wall? Louder. Take a guess. It's not a difficult question. Sorry? They didn't have language. Forget script, right? There was no language at that time. But the requirement for me to tell stories has been there from even before language was born. Yeah? And because we've been telling stories for close to 30, 40,000 years, because that's how old that painting is, human babies now are actually born with an ability to tell stories. How many of you have had children or seen children grow up who can at least speak a whole sentence together now? You've had children who can now at least speak a whole sentence, right? Okay. Now, what was your child able to do when they were able to speak a whole sentence? So let me give you an example. You walked into the room and there was a broken vase on the ground. And you said, how did that happen? Did they tell you, Mom, Dad, I ran in, I hit the table, it fell? Or did they tell you some version of, Spider-Man and Batman had come and they were fighting, and then which one happened? Unless Gandhiji was born in your house or something like that, it's probably the second one, right? Now, did you teach them how to tell stories? Like stories should have a beginning, it should have a character, it should have dialogues, it should have a climax. Did you teach them? No. You had to teach them numbers. You had to teach them alphabets, you had to teach them handwriting, mathematics, but you never taught them storytelling. Why? Because we are born with an ability to tell stories. There isn't a human being who doesn't have that ability. And we are not just great storytellers, we are also great story listeners. How many of you in this room have been in a meeting where someone is presenting and a lot of people find the mobile phone more interesting? Have you been in that meeting? We've got a lot of lucky people here. Okay, can we have a deal for the next, how many minutes do I have? About 50 minutes. That if I ask a question and your hand is down, then the answer is no, and not laziness. Is that fair? Yeah? So let me ask the question again. How many of you have ever been in a meeting where someone is presenting and a lot of people find their mobile phone more interesting? Okay, no lucky people anymore. Okay. So here's what I want you to do the next time it happens. Not if it's a client meeting or very senior people, but a meeting which you can take some chances. You are sitting in that audience, someone is presenting, a lot of people find their mobile phone more interesting, and this is what you do. You say, 3 months ago, and stop. What do you think will happen? Every head will go up. Why? Curiosity, that's what you think? Okay, if it is curiosity, try the other experiment, which is same thing, and you say, the best strategy in this case, and shut up. You think heads will look up? No, because it is not curiosity. It is because when you say 3 months ago or whatever it is, the brain says, hey, that could be a story coming. And the brain loves stories. Yeah? And the question that I work with is, how do you get that power? That power to get people from their Facebook to look up because the brain thinks you started a story, is what I do for a living, which is help organizations use stories and story structures to get their messages to be more concrete. And so what we'll do today for the next 50 minutes is set some foundations, give some examples, and then for a smaller group, we'll have a small room which I think accommodates only about 30 people, and see how you can do it yourself. So that'll be the workshop version, right? So let's move to figuring out that when you are trying to get this power, it's all sounds well here. Yeah, I want the power of people listening to me, so I must use stories. But when you go to business, unfortunately, there's a huge wall between storytelling and business. And why is that there a wall? Because of the definitions we have. What is stories? It's usually made up, correct? It's usually for children. It's usually for entertainment. What is business? It's about adults. It's serious stuff, and it's about facts and data. 2 different worlds, yeah? And I'll tell you how different that world is. Now, I'm assuming some of you came and sat here because of the session, some of course because of lunch, but some of you came here because you wanted to listen to something on storytelling. But let me ask you this question. Imagine you are about to begin a very important meeting. Something has gone wrong and you and your team were responsible for getting it right. And you've worked hard for this makeup meeting. Some big senior people are there. Maybe if you're in a B2B business, clients are there. and it's one of those make or break meetings for the year. You are about to start, and one of your colleagues says, let me tell you a story. What is the first thought in your head about that guy? First honest thought about that person. What a twerp. Anyone else? What? You are human, so you will have thought. What's your first thought? The guy's got nuts. Anything else? Is this not? It's not important. Now imagine, here are people who stop to listen to about storytelling, who are saying that anyone trying to use stories in business is gone nuts. Just imagine the guys who didn't attend this session, right? So the first rule, before we do any other work on storytelling in business, the first rule is this, which is, if you ever want to do storytelling in business, never, ever, ever use the S word. What is the S word? Never say it. Then how do you tell stories if you can't say, let me tell you a story? What do? Sorry? Give it as a kind of example. No. Just tell the story. Why? Because brain loves stories. What brain doesn't like is the definition it's given to stories. Now, one of the things that we will learn a bit more tomorrow, and those of you who read the book can get into much more nitty-gritties of it, is how do you do that? So why do you want to tell a story? So that people are listening to you and getting the message. But we have a problem of, like he said, he's a twerp. Yeah? We want to get rid of the problem. But brain loves stories. So what you have to learn to do is to deliver the story and finish and get out of the story before three things happen. First, the guy says, oh my God, this is a story. And then he or she looks around and says, this is a boardroom. He's a twerp. Yeah, before these three things happen, you should have finished your story and got out, right? So so first, no S word. Now, there are still some people thinking, should I go to another session? Because I really worked with a lot of data and fact, and I'm not into the business of storytelling. Now, here is what my definition, okay, before that, sorry, I didn't know this. How many of you would raise your hands to this question? I am a natural storyteller. How many hands up? Do we still have that old rule? If your hand is down, the answer is no? Okay, so a lot of hand down, right? Okay, so here's my question to the people who said no to this question. How many of you who said no to this question have been on a holiday, short or long, in the last 1 year? Those who said no but been on a holiday. You have? Okay. Can I assume that when you came back from your holiday to work, you zipped your lips and quietly went back to work and didn't tell anybody anything about the holiday? Is that a fair question? Did that happen? No? Then what happened? You shared your experience, but since you're not a storyteller, did you make a PowerPoint presentation? 4 things I liked about my holiday, 14 things you should avoid. Did you do that? No, you told a story. You say, you know what happened? We booked it on Yatra. At 10 o'clock, the wife and I, we reached there, and the bugger says there's no booking. What is that? A story. I'm not going to even ask you to put up your hands for the next question, because I know the answer. The next question is, how many of you have ever been to a bar or a restaurant with colleagues? Yeah. If you have certainly discussed a certain individual called the boss. Yeah? And unless you took a PowerPoint to the bar and told people, guys, I have a 300-page presentation, 1 slide on what I like about my boss, 299 about what I don't like. Sit through it. No, you told a story. You said, you know what happened today? The bugger, I took the draft into the room, blah, 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 right? So we are all natural storytellers. I've been doing this for 6 years. 98 2-day workshops and 6-month programs, 2,000 senior folks have gone through the program. I haven't taught a single person storytelling. Why? Because I don't need to. They're all natural storytellers. Yeah? So the question is, when I say story, what is a story? Yeah? Now, in the work I do, my definition of stories is this, which is stories are facts. What I help organizations and leaders to do is wrap them in context and deliver them with emotion. Can stories be made up? Of course, but not in the work I do. Not interested. Can stories be from mythology? Of course, Devdutt does such a wonderful job with it. Not interested. Why? Because at 2 o'clock, would you be interested in going in a meeting where everything will be made up? No. So if we have to get the power of stories into business, then we need to find ways of getting that to happen, which is we take facts and data and see how we can wrap context. Yeah? And we'll talk about why that is important. Right. So the next question is, how useful is business storytelling? Yeah? And this was the app question, so I'm going to, I was asking, how many people think it, sorry, no, forget the poll, it's just taking too long. Just keep me on the thing, we'll just ask the question. How many people put your hands up to E? Yeah? So the good news for the rest of you, every one of those can be done with storytelling. How do you build, explain concepts, abstraction? How do you build relationship? How do you influence others? And we'll touch upon a few of that as we go along. Now the question is, we talked about the storytelling in the bar about the boss just now, right? The question, how is that storytelling different from business storytelling? So if I were to draw a straight line, on one end, so on the right end as you look at it, is what I call big S storytelling. What is big S storytelling? It's your Ramayana, your Mahabharata, and your Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, your Harry Potter and Bahubali, all that is there. Fantastic stuff. Not interested. I'm interested otherwise, not in business. The area that interests me is on the extreme left, which is what I call little S storytelling. The kind of story I started with about Club Mahindra. Tiny stories. Stories that each and all of you have been part of. And we'll talk about how we can bring that in. Now, interestingly, however, we have to be a little careful while we do this. Because if I were to draw a graph where the x-axis is going from a little S story to a big S story. So imagine that Club Mahindra story to, let's say, Harry Potter. Yeah? And the y-axis is how engrossed people are with your story. You know, how interested they are. How should that graph look like? What do you think the graph would look like? It should go up, but it doesn't go up linearly. So it goes up for a while. So people who don't use storytelling is where I call everyone, right? As you learn the science of story and the processes of story, you will go to what I call, good communicators. Some of you will be natural and go a little higher. But then you have to be careful. If you want to get to the level of Harry Potter, then in business, you can't go straight. You unfortunately fall into this gigantic hole, which I call the uncanny valley of business storytelling. There are 4 things that can put you into the uncanny valley. The first is the S word. Yeah? You said, let me tell you a story, and people like him are saying, he's a twerp. Finished. Yeah? So you fall into the valley. So the first is no S word. The second is the storytelling voice. It was a dark day in December when the client walked in. We are not in that business. Yeah? Because if you're going to be communicating in the boardroom, you're not going to be voice modulating. Yeah? Very often I get calls from clients when I'm doing my program and they have just seen the final agenda and they call and say, other vendors have a module you don't have. I said, what module do they have? It's called voice modulation. Why don't you do voice modulation? I said, because I don't do theater. Right? I do business storytelling. We don't need voice modulation. Because when I say, it was a dark day in December, haven't you figured out it's a story? It's like saying, let me tell you a story. The third is a problem all of us will have when we bring in stories into our work, which is too many details. Much beyond what is required. So imagine that Club Mahindra story. If I started by saying, Club Mahindra is a company in the Mahindra Group. Mahindra Group is a very big group. It has many, many companies, and one of which is Club Mahindra. And it has multiple resorts, and some in the north and some in the south. And is all that anything important for the message I was giving? No. So that's one of the things. That's probably the most difficult thing people learn when they go through the journey of how do you leave up all the good things that you like about it. So the third thing is too many details. And the fourth thing, not having a point. You tell the story and you're looking at people and they're looking at you and say, so, nice story, no? Yeah, nice story, no, can happen in the bar. In business, there has to be a reason why you're telling the story. Now, for the last 6 years, I've been looking for a video of a business leader falling into the uncanny valley. But I guess they don't publish those videos. So I had to rely on a television serial. Some of you may have seen this serial. It's called The Modern Family. And we'll see someone falling into the uncanny valley. There's sound there at the console, guys. We need sound. I'm going to go back. Can you put the sound on now?
I don't know what's worse, that he competes every Thanksgiving in a pie eating contest, or that he's 9-time runner-up.
It wouldn't be Thanksgiving without the cons. That's all you need to tell that story. So the fog was rolling in over the mountains like an ominous blanket as we readied the giant slingshot. Lorna, the pastor's daughter, she was nervous because, like I said, it was after curfew. She was a goody two-shoe, only pastor's daughter I ever met that was. So we finally launched the pumpkin, and it sails through the air, goalpost to goalpost, past the end zone, into the parking lot, through the open roof of Lorna's dad's car. I turn to Cody and I say, now what are the chances of that landing there? He says where, and I say, the sunroof of a preacher man. Wah, wah.
So while even any one of them can make you fall into the valley, this guy made sure he did all four. Right? Now, while that was funny, the point I'm making is a little more serious. The point I'm making is this, that storytelling in business needs to be invisible. Now, I don't mean that no one will ever find out that you told a story, but not when you are telling the story. Because if I get to understand when you are telling the story, what is my head saying? This is not right. This is not the right thing. So, but at the end of the presentation, if someone says, hey, did you tell the story? You might say, yeah, that NASA story was so relevant for the work we do. So that is perfectly okay. Now, why do stories matter in business? Why is it that, I believe that this is a skill everyone should learn and should learn as early as possible? Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, you already know. Yeah? But I hope one or two things I'm going to let you think about. And the first one is that stories inspire action. Now you'll say, now that I know, right? You all know this, right? Okay, would I be right if I said when you are thinking and saying, I know this, you're thinking of either an inspirational leader or an inspirational situation? Yes or no? I am somewhere else. Yeah? To understand where I am, I want you guys to imagine. Imagine that you guys are the CXOs of a giant cement manufacturing company. Yeah? You're the decision makers. And I'm the safety officer, and I've come for my review. Yeah? And I walk in, and this is what I present. I say, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a bad year. We lost 8 people. That's 33% more than the people we lost the previous year. And while the non-fatality is major, this is where people have lost their arm or their leg, while that has come down by 14%, the minor non-fatalities and the near misses have been shooting through the sky. And this can't go on. Every quarter I have come and together we have made plans, but none of them seems to have worked. And today we are not only the worst in our industry, we are worst across industries. And we know we can't let this go on. So I've looked across the world and I found this little agency in Paris. They've worked with some of the biggest and most complex industries in the world, including some of our competitors. And they are pretty certain that if they can work with us for a year, they can bring us to world standards. Yeah? My request to you guys in the managing committee is to approve a project that will take a year and cost $500,000. Don't give me your answer. Just make up your mind. What is your response to me? Don't give me your answers yet. Your options are, don't go to the app. I'm going to ask you this later. So you'd be in one of those 3, right? Sack the guy, get a new safety manager, or no, let's do it. We can't lose any more lives. Or no, I can't take this with just that much data. Would you be in one of these 3? Yes or no? Okay, so don't tell me the answer. Now, let's try and rewind and imagine that conversation didn't happen. Yeah, just imagine it didn't happen. You guys are still the CXOs of this giant cement manufacturing company. I'm still the safety officer. And I come in and this is what I present. I say, ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago, I met Ramesh Menon's family. We lost Ramesh in the boiler accident in Jabalpur. And while we have given Ramesh's family an ex gratia payment of 5 lakhs, his wife was saying she has no idea how to bring up those children and get them married. And just last week, I met Vivek. Vivek lost his right hand in the Bombay accident. We have committed to Vivek employment for life. But Vivek knows there's no hope in hell he can get the kind of jobs he could have got if he had his right arm. And Ramesh and Vivek are not alone. Last year, we had 8 Rameshes. That is 33% more Rameshes than the year before. And while we've had 14% less Viveks, that's still 12 Viveks. And those other numbers of 43 and 170 that are shooting through the sky are nothing but Rameshes and Viveks waiting to happen. Right? And so we know this, we can't let this go on. Every year we have made plans together, nothing seems to have worked. So I've reached out and figured out a boutique agency in Paris who have worked with some of the most complex industries in the world, including some of our competitors, and they are pretty certain that if they can work with us for a year, they can bring us to world standards. My request to you in the managing committee is to sign off a project that will take a year and cost $500,000. Again, don't tell me your answer, just think and make up your mind as to which ones are you on. Yeah? And then I'll ask you. Don't go to the poll, I'll just ask you. Okay, now no, don't go to the poll, please. Just stay here. Is that thing got blank as well? No, is there? Can I have that thing back? I can't see what's in the back. No, but I don't know what is here. Okay, so here's my question. How many of you changed your mind in version 2? A fair lot. Now, how many of you are still in that bucket saying, I need more data? And there could be. There could be, right? Okay. Here's my question to the people who, the rest have changed their mind, right? Those of you who are saying, I need more data, would I be right if I said, in the first version, you would have told me, the safety officer, Mr. Safety Officer, don't come such underprepared in the next month's review meeting. In the next month's review meeting, get this, and this. We can't lose any more lives. We need that data to take decision. In the second version, you're probably telling me, Mr. Safety Officer, get out of the room, go get this data, and we'll take a decision. Would there be more urgency for the people who still are indecisive? Yes or no? But why? Why would many of you change your mind with the same data, and those who didn't change their mind are willing to take the decision now? Why? But why do you need real narration? Who are those guys? Your employees, no? Then why do I have to give narration? Your employees have died. Arey Baba, you know half of the guys who died, and if those are people who are working in your company, you know that they have families, no?
It's not been brought out so obviously.
Why has it not been brought up so obviously? What is missing here is the context to the number, right? Now, think of the last presentation you made in office and where there was numbers. Who was the only person in the room who had complete context on the data that you presented? You. Anyone else who had exactly the full context? Yes or no? Anyone? No. Now here's my question. Did you pause and set context, or did you assume context? This is my team. This is my company. I've made this presentation last month. This is just an update. And you went straight into the data. Which one happened? Did you explain context or assume context? Yeah. Most of us, if I go through, and it's not just your monthly meetings, if I take tapes of annual conferences, etc., what I see missing is context. And we'll talk about it a little later to show you how powerful or how lack of power not having context does. So what stories can do is really get people to take action on what you're asking them, because you brought them onto the context. It's not that they are not aware of these things, just that they've had 5 meetings since morning with 20 other pieces of data. They've walked into your meeting and you've just put one row and column and said, decide. Yeah? And he's just trying to figure out, she's just trying to figure out which part of the world are you. So the first thing is stories inspire action. The second, of course, we all know that stories are memorable, right? If I asked you guys next, Shyam, do you know the story about the Club Mahindra receptionist? What would you say? Yes. Yeah, you might forget it was Kurg. Yeah, you might forget it was a flower show, but you will remember the rest of the story. Yes or no? Okay, now think of the most important presentation you made last month. The one you made, right? It had a summary slide with 5 bullet points. Do you remember all of them? You can't even remember your own presentation bullet points. But you had some guy in a lunchtime came and told one story and you'll remember. We'll talk about why did that happen a little later, but stories are memorable. The next, of course, is stories have impact. All of you have been on this side of the stage, right? And if you were told by Shyam that your session is at 2 o'clock, while 100 people are going to eat behind you, would you have taken that session, yes or no? No, right? But I actually asked for a second half session so that I didn't have to fly in from Bombay yesterday. Why? For the first 21 years of my life when I worked elsewhere and I loved facilitating, I hated afternoon sessions. People will fall asleep. But today it's not because I've become a better speaker, because if I'm talking about stories or telling stories, then no one is going to leave. They're not going to yawn. And that's the power of stories, right? The other, of course, is stories spread. I don't know about you guys, I have the misfortune of being on multiple WhatsApp groups. In the morning, the same joke comes from 5 people. That happened to you? Why? Because we can't keep a good thing to ourselves. So when we hear a story, it is something we want to share. So here's my question to all of you. Oh, wow. One more reason I need to give you of why stories are so powerful. I'm going to show you 6 pictures or 5 pictures. They are taken in the early hours of my workshop where the participants are telling the story for the first time. I want you to see these pictures and tell me, do you see anything common in these pictures? Anything at all? Anything common in these pictures? Everyone is listening. How do you know they're listening? Eye contact. What else is telling you they're listening? Facial expression, the body language. Every one of those pictures, and I have 98 workshops into 5 tables, about 500 pictures. Every picture people are leaning in. Again, think of the last presentation you made. How many people in the audience were leaning in? Yeah? Now, so here's my question. How powerful would it be if every time you spoke to a client or to your own team, people leaned in to listen? Yeah? How powerful would it be that every time you spoke, people completely understood everything you said? There was no ambiguity. Everything was concrete. How powerful would it be if every time you spoke, people even remembered your message many, many days later? Yeah? How powerful would it be if not only they remembered your message, but inspired to act now like you did for the safety officer? Yeah? And finally, how powerful would it be that every time you spoke to someone, they went and told 5 other people about it? In a business situation, how powerful would that be? Very powerful. That is why stories matter in business. Yeah? Now, I'm going to start a journey today, which we'll finish tomorrow, with starting to talk about one basic stuff, which is, what is the story? Because a lot of people, 5 years, 6 years ago when I started, people used to say, why do we need stories? Oh, you mean you're from advertising? No, I'm talking about your CEO. Our CEO will tell stories. Are you stupid? Yeah, all that has changed now. Everyone is into storytelling. So we've just created a product story. Okay, tell me your product story. Our product has A feature, B feature, C feature. Next year we'll be on the cloud, and we are thinking software as a service is the way to go. Why is that a story? Yeah, is that a story? No. Yeah, many companies, and I'm not going to name some of the marquee companies in this country. You go to their website, and they've changed the About Us tab to Our Story. And what is our story? We were founded in such and such a year, then we made the first plant in such and such a year, then we made this plant, and then we made this plant, and now we're going digital. Why is that a story? Yeah? So we need to be understanding, if there's one thing you could take back today, yeah, is what are the essential elements without which it's not really a story. Yeah? Because not everything labeled a story is a story. So the first thing that stories need to have is all stories need to have a time marker and a location marker. Yeah? What is the most quintessential time marker when it comes to English stories? Once upon a time. Does not work in business, but yes, it's a time marker, right? So we need a time marker and a location marker. The second is we need a causal sequence of events. 2 happened because 1 happened. 3 happened because 2. So if you were founded in 1930 and that's why you created a steel plant, maybe there'll be a story. But if it's just that you're in 1930 and then a steel plant, that's not a story, because that's not a causal sequence. The next, of course, is stories need to have characters. And typically when we do oral storytelling, stories have dialogues. Yeah? If I had all these, would it be a story? I had location, I have character, time, I have a causal sequence of events, a beginning and an end, I have characters and dialogues. Would that be a story? Emotion. I'll have lots of emotion in the 1, 2, 3s. It needs an aha moment. Not just the context will have to be there in 1, 2, 3. There has to be an aha moment, something that I didn't expect. It doesn't have to be I fell off my chair, aha. Yeah, it could be I raised my eyebrow. Oh, is that how it finished? Because if I know how it finished, then it's no longer a story. Yeah, it's just reporting of history. Now, while that is what is required for something to be a story, it's still not a business story. For it to be a business story, it needs to be able to make a business point. Yeah? So, and we'll come back to this, any of the stuff that you share needs to have a reason why you're sharing it, and that will make it a business story. Now, in the workshop I run, one of the fundamentals that I teach is what I'm going to talk to you here. How many of you have this problem? Should I skip this section then? Only 5, 6. Okay, let me explain what this problem is. How many of you have had a situation where you walked into your team and said, guys, this is not the way to do it. I've told you this before. Do it this way, this way, this way, and this way. Get it? They said yes. You said, okay, you repeat. They said exactly the same. 7 days later, they were still doing that old thing. Has it happened to any of you here? Okay, fair. Okay, then we should go on. Okay, now why does that happen? When you explained, they said yes. You asked them to repeat, they repeated. Then why is that the message does not stick? They don't understand the outcome. They did, because you asked them to repeat it and they said, yeah, this is how it will happen. The impact. Maybe they even told you that. It could be. That could be a reason. But why is it not memorable? You did, huh? Because it's not a story. The reason it happens is because of our brain. Yeah? Over the 30, 40,000 years ago that we started telling stories through cave paintings, right? We've had this center brain, which still is the most powerful part of our brain. The only problem is this part of the brain cannot process language, cannot process data, cannot process text, any of that. It can't. It still can't. What it can process is visual and emotion. And because this is a brain that has been with us for 30, 40,000 years, it has become very good at something called memory. Yeah? Whereas when language was born, which is very much in the recent past, the human brain actually created a new layer. The scientists call this the neocortex, neo being new. Yeah? The neocortex is what deals with language, with numbers, with data, with logic. But unfortunately, this is the baby part of the brain. It does not have good memory. It's like the RAM and the ROM. At the point of interaction, it can repeat everything. But a few hours later, maybe sometimes minutes, it goes. Yeah? Now, those of you who were there when I started the talk, when I talked about the Kurg reception people, did anyone in the room who did not imagine a reception? When I told the story, you did not imagine a reception. No? You did not imagine a reception. Okay? Did not imagine 2 receptionists. It didn't picture in your head. Yeah? So for other than you, in which case you will not be able to retell the story. You are picturizing Kurg and this. Yeah? So you something, but your receptionists may have been women, and I may have been talking about, but you imagine, and you are with it saying, what happens next? What happened to this? And because of the visual and emotion, you are going to be able to remember this. Yeah? Now, how do we take that forward into our journey as storytellers? Yeah? Tomorrow morning. And to do that, I'm going to ask you a simple question. How long will it take on Monday before you give your first opinion in office? It's not a trick question, an easy question. How long will it take on Monday before you give your first opinion? Not even an hour. Why? For God's sake, you're paid for that, no? Someone comes and says, boss, this has happened, what should I do? You're paid for that. So nothing wrong with opinions. It wasn't a trick question. It's just a question of how long. Now, were you born with those opinions that you give? Anyone born with opinions? No. Then how do you have these opinions you have? Experiences. Either your experiences or experiences of others you trust via oral, written, or video. Yes? Is there any third way of getting an opinion other than your own experience or experience of others that you've either heard, read, or seen? Is there a third way? No. So in my language, opinions are created because of stories you've been part of or stories that you've heard of. Period. There is no other way to gain an opinion. So now, typically what we do when we give opinions in office, we either give assertion or statements which are really global. All the time you guys are doing this, or those kind of stuff. Or we'll generalize. What we don't do is talk about specific moments. So here is what I want you to do starting Monday. Every time you open your mouth and say something, ask yourself, is this an opinion? Because some of them I hope is not an opinion. Your boss says, what was the sales till last week? I hope that's not an opinion, it's data, right? So just ask yourself, is this an opinion? And invariably you'll find many of them are. Now keep waiting till you find an opinion that you strongly believe in. Hey, this one you're going to go and lay it on someone. Just pause and ask yourself, where did I have that opinion from? Where did that opinion come to me? Right? And once you pause, you'll know that it came because of a story that you've been part of, a story that you've heard. Now I want you to go into the meeting and do this. Start with your opinion. Say, this is my opinion. Share your experience. Yeah? And then tell the story. Share that opinion again. So how do you do it? So remember I said, go to the team. So let's say I'm going to my team and saying, guys, this is not how you do this. When you get a project, please don't jump into execution. The first 20% of time is to be spent on understanding the problem, working out a pathway, and then solving it. Did you get it? Repeat 5 days later. So here's what I would do. So I would say that, guys, this is not the way to do it. I've told you this before. The first 20% of time in any project, you should spend in understanding the problem and then looking at how you'll solve it before jumping into solution. I still remember 6 years ago, my team and I were one of the best in the company on machine learning and AI, and we were working with Cisco on a very, very important project. Ravi, who was my boss, really thought we were, cat's whiskers. We were the best team in the company. We had a lot of respect for me and my team. One day, Ravi comes back from a client call with Cisco and says, I see they have asked for a new patch on the program. I have told them 6 months. You think your team can deliver in 6 months? And I said, boss, 6 months? I'll do it in 3. Immediately he left. I called my team and I palmed off, you do this, you do this, you do this. 3 months later, about 2 months later, when I called them back to understand where they were going, I realized I had completely misunderstood the brief. And now it was too late to not only finish it in 6, probably not even finish it 9. That day, I lost the respect my boss had for me and my team, and my boss lost face with the client. And that is why I believe that you shouldn't jump into a project as soon as you get it. Spend the first 20% of time understanding the problem and then looking at going into the solution. Now, did you or did you not imagine a boss of mine and me having a conversation? By the way, I'm not a machine learning expert, but your brain told you it is. Yeah? That's what brains do. And because your brain was picturizing this conversation, it was going into that old brain of yours which deals with pictures and emotions. Yeah? And indeed, in all the work that I do in teaching people storytelling, this is really 75% of storytelling. 75% of using stories in business is about saying, where did I get that opinion from? If I believe in anything, where did I get that opinion from? And once you ask yourself that, you will find you got it from something that you can share, right? And each of you will have these stories of your own. What you, of course, have to learn to do is how to tighten it. Remember, we said not too many details. And then you can also use other stories, right, that you heard which sort of vibrate or resonate with the same point of view you have. So that's 75%, giving an example kind of story. The other 25% is stories that are sort of structured, if you like, for various situations. And again, for those of you where this makes sense, there's a book there which you can read which takes you through many, many different structures of stories. Some of them are stories to build connections, stories to explain change, stories to change people's mind, stories to explain success. Depending on how much time I have, I'm going to try and deal with 2 of them. Yeah? The connection story and the clarity story. Let's start with the connection story. Would you agree that people first have to buy you before they buy your product, idea, or service? Yes or no? Okay. Second, do they have to buy that you are an MBA engineer, 10 years of experience, worked in these kind of projects and these kind of companies, or do they have to buy that you are trustworthy, hardworking, creative, etc.? Which one? Are you guys sure? Second one? So you are saying that people have to buy me and they buy the second one? Yes? No. But first one just gets me through the door. It doesn't get me the relationship, which it builds rapport for you. So what you're basically saying is, when you're building rapport and connection, character will always trump credentials. Yes? Now, tell me, when you get an opportunity to introduce yourself, hi, my name is, what do you do? You introduce yourself, no? What do you do? Most people I know do some mini version of the reverse resume, right? Hi, my name is so-and-so, I'm the president of whatever, I have more time. Before this, I worked here and etc. Oh, I have more time. This is where I studied, and if I have more time, this is where I was born. Yes or no? What has that told me about your character? So we have a problem. Yeah? Now, all of you know that you have a problem here, right? On one hand, you just said we need to explain character to build relationship, but at that time we get to build relationship, we are doing credentials. Why do we do that? Not because we are stupid. It's just that we don't know how to do that. Because it's okay for me to say, hi, my name is Indranil and I'm a computer science engineer, which I am, by the way. Yeah, and you'd be okay with it. But what if I said, hi, my name is Indranil, I'm very trustworthy? Not only it doesn't work, now you're going to be, I'm going to be really careful of this guy. Yeah. So what you need to learn to do is something I call a connection story. And this is how it works. Many of you or most of you did not know me at all till I stood up. I asked the person introducing, saying, don't introduce me. Don't say, where did I study, etc., etc. But I started by telling you a story from my life. Yes? Just based on that story, what have you concluded about me? That I am good, bad, ugly. If you are going to go out from here and meet someone and say, hey, that guy who spoke there, what's he like? And you are going to explain to them what you thought about me as a person, my character, my capability, my values, my beliefs. What are the words you'd use? Anything, good, bad, ugly. Nice person, affable, interesting, communicator. From the story, that you've heard a story about what happened in my life. From that story, what did you conclude? I have experience. What else? I worked in Mahindra. What else? I understand the hospitality business. Now, suppose and I know if I went through each one of you, I'd get a fairly large amount. But what if I didn't do that? And I did what many speakers would have done. Hi, my name is, I'm the founder of Storyworks, and I've worked here and worked there and studied here and did this. And then at the end, I say, I'm a great storyteller. I'm a very affable person. Yeah, I am very experienced. What happens? It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because assertions aren't credible. And if it sounded funny when I say, hi, I'm trustworthy, then believe me, that's what it sounds when you say, my company is the best, we are the fastest, we are the cheapest. All you're doing is doing assertions. And since you don't do a survey at the end, no one is saying, look, I don't believe you. Yeah? But yet, you were willing to sign up on saying, I am this, I am that, because of the stories I said. Why? Because stories are credible. And so a connection story is really a story from your life which you use, yeah, in order to convey something about yourself that is relevant for that situation. And tomorrow, for those of you who sign up for the workshop, we'll actually do an exercise for each one of you to come up with a connection story. Yeah? So how do you connect with other people is through stories of your life which leaves people. So quick example, imagine I'm going to a bank and I'm looking for a loan. I'm the founder of Storyworks. I'm looking for a working capital loan. I have filled up the form. I need to introduce myself, right? So one version is, hi, my name is, I studied here, studied there, worked there, last 6 years, working very hard. Our initial clients are very happy. Here's my form. I hope you look at it favorably. Usual stuff, right? What if I just did a little bit of difference? I said, I was born in Shillong in the Northeast to a middle-class family. Now, somehow, my parents managed to put me into a premier education institute where almost all my classmates were from more affluent families than I was, tea garden kids in the works. And they always had more money to spend in the canteen. So I remember when I was in class 3, I came up with this idea of running a comic circulating library, that too with borrowed comics, and I made a bit of money, and that really excited me. And things like that have always excited me. And I finished my schooling in Shillong and went to Calcutta, studied engineering, then I worked here, worked there, etc. 6 years ago, started Storyworks. We've been working very hard, blah. Exactly the rest of what I said there. And I did this to 2 different set of bank managers. Do you think that there might be a different approval rate? Yes? Which set might give me have a higher approval rate? The second one. Now, let's imagine that the second one did not have the authority for the loan I've asked for. I've asked for 2 crores. They have only 1. So they've gone to their regional boss and said, boss, we should give IC from Storyworks a loan. So the boss says, why? What's he like? What are the words they might use? He is entrepreneurial, hardworking, values money. But if I added those words in this first version and said, I'm very entrepreneurial, I'm hardworking, I value money, doesn't work. And so that is what a connection story is. Yeah? Now we're going to move to clarity story, which is about explaining change, which is what we are doing all the time, right? It's the easiest thing to do, right? You explain change and everyone lines up. No. Why is it that when we are trying to do stories again, change, we have this issue of messages not sticking? I have two hypotheses that I want to test out. And then I'll give you a story-based solution. And tomorrow we'll actually workshop it out. For the first exercise, I'm going to show you a video. The video has no audio. At the end of the video, I'm going to ask some of you, what is the thing? What's happening here? So just let's look at that video. Anyone? I'll just take a few. Anyone from here? What did you see? You saw something, yeah? Someone was trying to catch a ball.
A man was protecting his house from.
A man was protecting his house. Did you all see some ball and man, or did you see something else? Okay, would you agree, I don't know, visually probably about 75, 80 people, would you agree if I had all the time in the world and I asked each one of you, I would get 80 different versions? Yeah, even if you had husband, wife, child, there will be a different husband, wife, child. Yes or no? Yes. Did you see 80 different videos or one? Then why would I have 80 different versions? Why did you have to bring your perception into this? There was no clarity. Yeah? So what you're saying is that message was abstract. And the problem with the human mind is, when we are kids, we will say, we don't know, and ask questions. When we become adults, we know everything. None of you said, I had no clue what that was about. Yeah? You said, I know that is the husband and wife and the kid. No, I know that's the boss and the bully. Yeah? We cannot live with abstraction. We will make up our minds. Now, why is this important to business communication, change management? Where am I going? I'm going to put 4 lines on the board, taken from 4 strategy documents of 4 of the biggest companies in this country. I'll not name them. I had worked on their strategy communication. And I'm going to put 4 lines from their strategy document, 4 different companies. I want you to tell me whether you, in your organizations, have ever heard of words like this. We must be deep collaboration and connection. Yeah? Optimizing our operating practices. Yeah? Creating some productive integration. And my absolute favorite, building an enhanced culture of innovation. Have you heard things like this before? You have? Then tell me, except for the person who came up with that line, building an enhanced culture of innovation, why is it not circles and triangles for everybody else? Is it not? If I asked you, do you understand what building an enhanced culture of innovation, you will say, of course I do. One answer or 80? Then what's the point in communicating if 80 people walk out from this hall with 80 different? So the first big problem is our understanding that if we have an important message, we need important words. Yeah? If I can't be, this is a $20 idea, why a 3-cent word? And the first thing that we have to do in teaching when I work with senior leaders is to say, can you please speak to the 10-year-old in the audience without talking down to the 10-year-old? And here's my thing, if you can't explain what you do to a 10-year-old, then I'm sorry, you don't know about it. You can't be in whatever rocket science you want. The second, so one is abstraction. The second is industry jargons. Yeah, you go to an IT, oh, we are going to do agile. Oh, you mean you'll be fast? No, agile as opposed to waterfall. What the hell are you talking about? Yeah. So, but they think they know because that's the word they think everyone understands. The other is all of you and me. We are great echo chambers of fancy sounding phrases. Data is the new oil. What the hell does it mean? No, but data is the new oil. Now, I understand, but what does it mean? Everyone has their own understanding of data is the new oil. And then we are saying, why didn't my message stick? No, your message stuck, but 80 different ways. So the first thing you should learn to get rid of is abstraction of language and abstraction of phrases, etc. Many of you may not like this guy, but he wrote a letter about 7 months ago of how to be more productive to his team. And one of the points he made was amazing. He said about not using nonsense words and jargons in intercompany communication. But that thing in yellow, he said, to me is awesome. It says, in general, anything that requires an explanation inhibits communication. So look at any communication you have and say, is there any word or line that I might need to explain to a 10-year-old? Then you have a problem. Yeah? Now, so that was my first experiment, which is that we forget to give concreteness. For the second experiment, I'm going to put a paragraph on the board. Please read it till either one of the three things happen. A, you get it, then stop reading. 2, you get bored, stop reading. And 3 is I switch it off, in which case you have to stop reading, right? I know it's switched off. I'm just saying. Anyone thought it made sense? No? Okay. Okay, I'm going to show a picture for a few seconds. Look at it very carefully because I'm not going to put it on for too long and then we'll discuss. Now read this, please. Is this now suddenly making sense? Okay, tell me how many of you in this room had never known about how to do laundry in your life before? Had no clue, you know, how to segregate, how to wash, how to iron, how to fold, and then wear them again. Had no clue. Or maybe you guys are so senior that you haven't seen a laundry room in many, many years. So you forgot. No, you all know laundry, yes or no? Then why can't I assume context? You know laundry, why couldn't you get it? Because you're not sitting now in the laundry basket, like none of your audience is sitting on the why that you came for. Go back and look at most of the presentations that you made internally, your CEOs have made internally. It's all about the what, the how, the when, the where, how much, etc. The why is missing. Well, you know about the why. Yes, I know, but I need to be reminded now when you're telling me about the what and the how, not somewhere else. And what is something that you can't do without a context? Storytelling. Can you ever tell a story without a context? Can I just suddenly say, and then, you know, the guy reached the counter and then, which guy, where? So when you force yourself to put your messaging into a story context, then you make sure that context happens. And that we do something using something I call the clarity story pattern. It has 4 parts. And instead of me going through this, again, to learn it, the book has far more details. I'm going to use one example and we'll close there. If I asked you guys to vote for the world's best communicator ever, what kind of names would you give me? Steve Jobs. So let's listen to Steve Jobs. Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to show you a video of Steve Jobs' last speech at the WWDC. WWDC is the geek conference in June, not the September, which is for us. He's going to be launching iCloud, right? Now, one of the things in change is there is always something that we look for when we do this work called anti-stories. What is an anti-story? A story that the listener will have in their head as to why whatever you're saying won't work. And we need to deal with those anti-stories during the conversation. Now, I'm going to play Steve's speech, and I want you to look for 3 things, and we'll finish with that speech today. One is look for the clarity story structure. That should be easy because I've annotated the video. In the past, then something happens, so now, in the future. Second, look at how he addresses anti-story. Again, easy because I've said anti-story 1, anti-story 2. What you need to work on is, can you count the number of words a 10-year-old won't understand when a geek is explaining something geeky to a bunch of geeks? Yeah? So, sound.
So, I get to talk about iCloud. We've been working on this for some time now, and we're really excited about it. About 10 years ago, we had one of our most important insights, and that was that the PC was going to become the digital hub for your digital life. What did that mean? Well, it meant that that's where you were going to put your digital photos. Where else were you going to put them? Your digital video off your digital camcorder. And of course, your music, right? You were going to acquire it in the device or potentially on your Mac, and you were going to basically sync it to the Mac, and everything was going to work fine. And it did for the better part of 10 years. But it's broken down in the last few years. Why? Well, because the devices have changed. They now all have music. They now all have photos. They now all have video. And so if I acquire a song, I buy it right on my iPhone, I want to get that to my other devices. Right? I pick up my iPad and it doesn't have that song on it. So I have to sync my iPhone to my Mac. Then I have to sync my other devices to the Mac to get that song. but then they've deposited some photos on the Mac, so I have to sync the iPhone again with the Mac to get those photos. And keeping these devices in sync is driving us crazy. So, we've got a great solution for this problem. And we think this solution is our next big insight, which is we're going to demote the PC and the Mac to just be a device, just like an iPhone, an iPad, or an iPod Touch. And we're going to move the digital hub, the center of your digital life, into the cloud. Because all these new devices have communications built into them. They can all talk to the cloud whenever they want. And so now, if I get something on my iPhone, it's sent up to the cloud immediately. Let's say I take some pictures with it. Those pictures are in the cloud, and they are now pushed down to my devices completely automatically. And now everything's in sync with me not even having to think about it. I don't even have to take the devices out of my pocket. I don't have to be near my Mac or PC. Now, some people think the cloud is just a hard disk in the sky, right? And you take a bunch of stuff and you put it in your Dropbox or your iDisk or whatever, and it transfers it up to the cloud and stores it, and then you drag whatever you want back out on your other devices. We think it's way more than that, and we call it iCloud. Now, iCloud stores your content in the cloud and wirelessly pushes it to all your devices. So it automatically uploads it, stores it, and automatically pushes it to all your other devices. But also, it's completely integrated with your apps. And so everything happens automatically, and there's nothing new to learn. It just all works.
Right. I don't know about you. If some old uncle now called me and said, "What is this iCloud? Why do we need it?" I think I'll do a damn good job explaining it, right? How many difficult words? None. So here's my submission to all of you. If someone like him could explain something like that to a bunch of geeks using not one word that a 10-year-old can understand, then what's stopping us, right? And so we're going to move from here. Tomorrow, I'm just going to put up the details. I'm going to quickly shift. Where can you find stories? That's your stories are the best. But if you do want to get a collection, we have a YouTube channel called Storyworks. There are about 20 videos of leaders telling stories and the 40 videos of me telling stories that you can use. And I'll just quickly talk about tomorrow. So tomorrow at 2:30 at Wazir. No, not this one, the next one. So that's on your calendar. There's only limited seating, about 30. There's already some registration. We'll do first come, first serve. Liane is here. Just give her your names in case you want to attend, and we'll see you where. We'll assume what we discussed today is already there. So we're not going to repeat that and go straight into trying this out ourselves. Yeah? And so that's really what I'm going to leave you guys with. If you want a copy of, or not a presentation, because the presentation hardly had any words, but a synopsis of what I talked about, just Gautam is around there. Yeah, we partner with Right Selection, so just drop your card and we'll email you a synopsis of what we talked about today. And for those of you who want the book, again, Right Selection has a booth at booth 21. That should read 21. That's just there. I'll be there signing the books in case you want to pick them up. So that's all I had today. Thank you. Thank you so much.